want to propose today is that because this is so important, we need a discipline. So I'm going to present to you a 6-step process. Sounds complicated, but it is really not. Once you learn it, you will be able to master it. I have to tell you right now that what I share today is not original with me. 41 years ago, I learned this process at a leadership conference, actually in Atlanta, through a company called Leadership Dynamics. The company is no longer around, so thankfully I don't have to pay them royalty. But I have used this process over the last 41 years, and I have found it to be very useful for me. So I'm sharing with you today. All right, the 6th step. The first step is decision objectives. Now, for every step, there is a trap, and I want to help you get over those traps. So in the first step is what we call the binary trap. Usually, you will be presented with a decision such as this. Do you want to buy this or not? Do you want to marry this person or not? Do you want to take this job or not? Now, this is called a binary trap because it is an either or. Now, why is that a trap? Why is that not good? Because, first of all, it's either or. So you have only 50% chance of success of making the right decision. So now imagine every day you have a series of decisions. The first time you only have 50% success. Second time, 50%. Now you're down to 25%. And very soon, you will find that your quality of life is very poor because you are caught up in the binary trap. And most people will present the decision to us that way. You got a good friend who says, hey, this weekend, do you want to go fishing with me or not? So how do we get out of it? I want to share with you 2 cases from the life of Jesus. I have chosen this because I think many of you know these stories. The first one is when his enemies try to trap him by the question, should we pay taxes to Caesar or not? You see, every time you hear do this or not, then you know it is a binary trap. Now, why is it bad? Because in this case, both answer would be wrong. Because at that time, the Jews were governed by the Romans, and just as today, nobody likes to pay taxes. So if Jesus were to say, yes, we should pay taxes to Romans, then he would lose the support of the masses. Not only because everybody doesn't like to pay taxes, but you're paying taxes to this horrible authoritarian Roman Empire. So the Jews, the common people, wouldn't like it. Now, if he said, no, we don't need to pay taxes to Caesar, then he would incur the wrath of the Roman Empire. He will get into trouble with the authority. That's why this is a trap. How did he get out of it? He said, well, show me a coin. And they did. And he said, pay to Caesar. And first of all, he asked, whose image is on this coin? And then he said, pay to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, pay to God what belongs to God. So you can see, we are often being trapped, and there is a way out. Another example, it said, a woman was caught in adultery, and by Jewish law, they could or they would stone the lady to death. So these religious leaders were trying to trap Jesus. And once again, they used a binary trap. They said, should we stone this woman to death? Now, why is that a trap? Because if he said, yes, we should stone her, he had been preaching mercy and compassion. So that would discredit what he has been teaching. But if he says, no, because of mercy, we should not stone this woman to death, then he would be breaking the Jewish law. That would also get him into trouble. How did he get out of it? He said, well, whoever has not sinned, cast the first stone. The interesting thing happened. The oldest left until the youngest. And in the end, nobody was remaining except Jesus and this woman. So you can see that traps binary traps often come and try to get us into trouble, but there's a way out. And how do we get out of it? Remember that our decisions day to day, first of all, reveal who we are. It reveals our values, whether it's time, appreciation, money is important. Secondly, our decisions test us. If we say this is who we are, then our decisions must match what we claim to be. And then thirdly, our decisions will shape us. It's like once you get on, say you're going somewhere, say from Frankfurt to Stuttgart, you get on the highway and you go in a certain direction, and your opportunities will be limited the farther you go. So in the same way, when we make decisions every day, we are shaping our future. So to avoid the binary trap, we ask, what is the long-term goal? What am I deciding to do? Think about it this way. You're on a train platform. You do not jump on the train that looks the best, the coolest, the super fast, right? You choose the train that will take you to your destination. But unfortunately, sometimes people make decisions based on, wow, this train looks great, you know, doesn't matter where it goes. I just like to sit on this train because it is cool, it is nice, it's good. So to get out of the trap, you ask, what is my long-term goal? For example, your friend called you and said, hey, Kosha, do you want to go fishing with me this weekend? Kosha should pause and think, no, this is a trap, right? Do you want to go fishing with me or not? So he has to ask, what's my long-term goal? Maybe his goal for this time is to be with his family, or he wants to develop a relationship with this friend. Then later we'll talk about option, because he doesn't have to agree to go to fishing. He can do some other thing, maybe golfing, or having two families together, this and all that. Okay, and then are there other options? All right. So to avoid the binary trap, the first thing you do is to pause and say, what is my long-term goal? Now, this is a discipline. I make every decision based on my long-term goal, including the food I eat, including the clothing I wear, where I go. And afterwards, I'll show you an example, a real example. So at this point, if it is an important decision, write it down, okay? You don't have to do this for every decision, but when you have an important decision, write down your decision statement. Because when you do that, you're processing it. In 2010, my family moved from out of China to United States. I'm a Singaporean, my wife is American, and our children were starting to go to college. So we decided to move to the United States. So when I move here, I have a decision to make. I have to decide to have a place to stay. So I'm going to use this case. I decided that I use this form, which I have given to Leader Impact. So if you want this form in PDF version, you can ask them for it. I will gladly share that with you. So I put my decision down and I write my decision statement as, I must decide a residence that is suitable for work and environment. Okay, this is very important, right? I'm not just buying a house, I'm buying a residence, meaning a place of domicile, a place I want to be able to rest and relax. But I also foreseen that I will be taking somewhat a retirement. I'll be working from home. And thankfully, I'm glad I did that because of the pandemic. Last year, for this whole pandemic, I had not stopped a bit because my home is set up for work. I've done more than 100 webinars and this and that. So I put my decision as a place for work and also entertainment. My wife and I love to entertain people. So the second step, after you have written down your decision statement, you want to ask, what are my objectives or criteria, all right? What will help me accomplish my goal? In this step, you have to avoid the intuition trap, because most people make the decisions based on feelings. I do marital counseling sometimes, and I often ask a question to the couple. I say, why are you, why do you want to marry this person? And the most common answer I get is, you guess it, we are in love. I love this person, therefore I'm marrying him or her. I told them, I said, I have bad news for you. I said, your feelings will come and go. I said, one day you wake up and you realize you no longer have feeling for this person. Does that mean that you make a wrong decision? So at this step, be careful of the intuition trap. Now, does that mean that we cannot use intuition? No, but you have to balance it. And especially for younger people without experience, don't trust your feeling, all right? If you are older and more experienced, what we call intuition is actually, the good intuition is based on experience, not just feeling. So how to avoid this trap? You use criteria, all right? You use criteria to balance your feelings. So at this juncture, I ask, what am I trying to maximize? Benefits, profits? And what do I want to minimize? Disadvantages, costs, etc. So with that 2010 decision, I listed a few criteria. Normally, 5 to 8 criteria would be good enough. Any more, you will find that your criteria will cancel out one another, all right? Some people go and buy something, they say, I want something cheap and something good. Now, they don't always come together. Cheap stuff are not usually good stuff. Not always true, but usually not the case. So for me, I have listed down these few. I want enough bedrooms. I want big living room, home office, price, of course, I want to minimize, location, good location. Why do I put minimize? I want to have limited number of, hours of traveling. I do not like to waste time on traveling. So at that time, I put that down, and then a good community. Now, so this is the first part in this step, but this is not good enough because these are just very general criteria. So I need to sharpen it. I need to refine my criteria. So I want to make it quantifiable. And those of you who have been through management training will know this acronym SMART. So a good criteria or a good goal has to be specific, measurable, achievable, related, and timely. All right. So together it forms the acronym SMART. Now, so I talked about having a large living room. I talked about entertainment. So I start to think, how many people do I want to entertain? How many people can we afford to entertain at one time? There is a flight school near my house here now. And my wife and I were both involved in teaching there. I taught leadership there, and she taught English because we had lots of Chinese pilots come over. So we sometimes have 20, 30 pilots, trainees come over. So I decided that I want to refine my criteria, and in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through all the details, but you'll see here, we decided on having 5 bedrooms, and the house should be greater than about 300 square meter. Why 5 bedrooms? We have 3 children, and we want to have at least 1 guest room. And then the living room, based on what I estimated the number of guests I want to have from time to time, dining room. Then remember, I talked about having a home office. I want that, and right now this one is my home office, as you can see. And then price, of course, I have a price limit, and I set it at $350,000 US. I want to be 5 kilometers or less away from my office, and I want to be 5 kilometers away from the highway because I travel a lot, and like I said, I don't like to waste time. And I want a good, quiet community. I want middle age, not too young and not too old. All right. So I am a handyman, so I like to have a sort of what the Americans call a man's den. I like to have a workroom. So in fact, this is one of my criterion. And then quiet place. Okay, then after I have sharpened or refined my criteria, I list them by priority. And how do I do that? I pick the first one. I choose the most important criterion and give it 5 points. And of all these criteria that I have listed, the first one is price, $350,000. That is my most important. Then I weigh it against other criteria. I determine that location is also important because time is very precious. When I was in China, I wasted a lot of time. You know, Beijing is very congested, and sometimes I waste hours on the road. So I thought from here on, I do not want to waste more time. So I set it as a goal to be less than 5 kilometers away from the office and also the highway. So you can see, and then I weigh the others according to this. So the number of bedrooms become my second most important criterion. And then office becomes a third. So I give it a 3 point. So a 5 point scale, 5 to 1. Now, when I teach this course, I do teach this as a semester course. Most of my students make the mistake of having 5 points. Everything is important. The result is nothing is important. So you have to force yourself to determine what is more important. Otherwise, you will have a very flat set of criteria. Okay. All right. The third step is option. Now, in this step, the trap is tunnel vision, because most of the time people will present a problem along with a solution for you. Like I said early on, Tosha's friends say, hey, this weekend, should we go fishing? So he wants to spend time with Tosha, but he already presented an option. All right, it's fixated on one option, which is fishing. Tunnel vision limits your options. The more options you have, the better your decision. Now, thankfully, I moved to the States in 2010. This was right after the mortgage financial crisis. So later you will see, I actually have 20 options. All right, everybody was selling their houses at a very good price. So sometimes you get that opportunity. So I evaluated and I had 20, I listed. Obviously, I don't have time to evaluate that many. Like one time when I want to hire someone, I got a few hundred applications. So you immediately filter out the ones that you don't want to waste time on. So for me, I have chosen 5 options. Now, at this step 2, you can have creative options. Don't be stuck with the obvious. Like a friend of mine, he retired, and he's, instead of continuing to live in his house, he and his wife decided that they want to travel around United States, and so they bought a tour van, a bus like this, and they just drove around the country, and this is their residence. So this is called a creative option. All right. So now, in day-to-day decisions, if you just remember these 3 steps or just apply these 3 steps, you will be doing very well. First of all, stop and ask, what must I decide? What is my objective? What is my long-term goal? All right, so you determine your goal, and then you have criteria. You know, what will make me successful in this decision? All right, so you refine your criteria, and then third, you cultivate and develop your options. So day to day, if you just remember these 3 steps, you will be a much more effective and efficient leader. So 3 steps. Now I want to go on to the next because we have to make some big decisions like buying a house. All right, buying a house is probably one of the biggest purchase item that we ever make. So I'm going to give you 3 more steps. Step 4 is collect information. In this step, the trap is haphazard trap. It is subjective opinion. Now we are bombarded with that now in this information age. You know, with this pandemic, you hear all kinds of opinions, including expert opinions. So not all opinions are useful to us. So in this step, we really need to know how to filter out and determine what is good information. We want to focus on facts because only facts can be validated. Opinion is a personal judgment. No, opinions are not all bad. We all have opinions. But we need to know that opinions sometimes can get us into trouble. All right, everybody is entitled to his opinion. Oh, my football team is the best. Arsenal is the best, or Liverpool. Now, if somebody puts it up that way, it is a problem, right? Because you have Leipzig and Cologne, you're always fighting. Then, you know, if you say that the city of Cologne is the best place in Germany, and then somebody will disagree with you, and then you get into a fight. Now, to get around that, you can just say, for me, Cologne is the best place to be, or Skopje or whatever. Once you say for me, then it is okay. So when in this step, you need to, first of all, focus on the facts and then be careful of opinions. An example here is this. Difference between a fact and opinion is somebody says, oh, today is a beautiful day. That is an opinion. If he says today the sun is out and the temperature is 24 degrees Celsius, that is a fact because that is that can be validated. All right, it is objective. So at this step now, I collected information on all the options. So like in option A, I wrote down what are the features, and these are all objective. 5 bedrooms, 500 square meter, big living room, 65 square meter, and so forth. And the price is $347,000. I did that for every option, all right? It's important that I make sure that the information is correct. So at the end, I have this whole set of options and their corresponding features. And then step 5, it's to evaluate your options. In this step, you want to avoid the voting trap. All right, in a meeting, we usually use this approach. Now, voting is not all bad, but just remember one thing, the majority is not always right. Sometimes you hear advertisement, they say, oh, you know, 100 million people cannot be wrong. That is illogical, okay? The whole world can be wrong. So don't believe it when somebody say, oh, the majority cannot be wrong. Because what is wrong, and what is right is right. So in this step, you want to avoid the voting trap, and you do that by evaluating the various options. All right, you evaluate your option against the criteria that you have set up. You award points to those that meet the criteria, and then the best option is the one with the highest score. So in this, you will see that's what I did, and then I chose the one with the highest score. Then the last step, that is not all. Once I determine that option A is the best for me, based on my criteria, I still need to do one step, and it's called analyze your risk or assess your risk. Because in this area, there is a trap called the lucky trap. This is when, you know, people go to Las Vegas, they go to casino, and they go and gamble. they often have this illusion that they can beat the odds. You know, the odds is 20 against 1, all right? The casino will beat you 20 times. You only have one chance to win. But there are people who believe that they can beat the odds. Now, you cannot, all right? So odds are odds. So in this step, we want to analyze what are the risks. Every decision has risks. The reason, very simple, because there are unknown factors, all right? We do not have all the information. So we want to assess what are the possible risks, and then we test the best option against these risks, potential risks. So in this step, we ask what can go wrong, and then how serious. You score them from 0 to 100. So I chose option 1. I asked what can go wrong, and at that time, I still had a house in China I needed to sell. So one of the risks is I cannot sell my house in time and transfer the money here to buy. And at that time, also the banks in America will not offer any loans. Remember, it was right after the mortgage crisis. So because I had not lived in the United States for many years by that time, and my wife also, so we would never be able to get a mortgage loan for the new house. So one of the risks that I faced is I cannot sell the house that we have in Beijing. And then second potential risk is that there may be hidden problems, structural or termite, whatever. I did not list here, but this option A is by a lake. So another risk would be flooding. But I dealt with that quickly. I determined that there had not been any flooding there for many years. So anyway, so these are the potential risks. And then I ask how serious, and I give them a 0 to 100 score. So cannot sell the house, I put it at 70 because they will be stuck with a family, not having a place to stay. And the hidden problem is about 60. And then I ask the next question, what is the probability of this happening? It's from 0 to 100%. All right, I use another case that you may be more familiar with. What is the risk of flying? All right, well, maybe there is an accident. Now, how serious is that? Probably 100. But what is the percentage of that happening? We know it is super small, and that's the reason why most of us would fly. I know I have friends who refuse to fly, but anyway, so this is how we assess risk, how serious and how probable. And in this case, I determined that I can live with the risk because it's only 14, a factor point of 14 and 6. And generally, now different people will have different risk aversion. Generally, 0 to 20 risk factor is considered low and acceptable. And 20 to 40 is medium risk. So this is the sort of either or situation. Some people will be more open to taking a slightly higher risk. And then when it is above a factor point of 40, we say it is a high risk. Don't take it is our advice. Now, what do? You reject that option and you go to the second best and you do the same risk assessment. So here you go. All right. This is a 6-step decision-making process. Like I said, I teach this course through a 3-month semester, but today I do it in 30 minutes. So I hope that this has been useful to you. And this is a house I bought finally, and that is option A, and I'm very pleased with it. Okay, I have just published a book in China, and it's called Business Servants, and this topic is in the book. Unfortunately, it's still in Chinese. Only Tosha's boys may have a chance to read them in Chinese. So I want to turn back the time to Tosha. Thank you so much for allowing me to share this topic, which is a passion of mine. I love to help people make better decisions because better decisions will make a better world. Thank you.
Wonderful job, Dr. Tong. This is what we all need. We need to know what is the process of making the right decision. And when I say right, you put it in very, very good terms that that's the smart decision. And there's no one right or wrong decision. There's no binary, either this or that. It's just a good way to calculate and find out what are the best ways that you can continue on into the good, better future, I should say, where you are influencing other people. Wonderful to listen, and I have tons of questions, but I already said that people can ask a couple of questions before we go in the breakout rooms. We already see a couple of questions. Let's see if, yeah, I'll choose the one from Romania. Actually, never mind, that's just a technical question. Okay, here we go. Kalin, how can you take into account the things that you know you don't know? So I think this talks about the risk.
Well, if you're talking about risk, then you force yourself to ask what can happen. If you do not know, then you ask people who are experienced. So one of the things I did was like using that example. I asked my friends who have been here already living in this town, what are the few things I need to be aware of? Now understand that you will never have all the information. And that's the reason why some people choose not to make decisions. But know that if you choose not to make a decision, you have already chosen. You have chosen the status quo. So yeah, you collect information and you assess the risk and you move on. I hope that answers the question. Now, that's actually a very good one here. Let me answer it. How do you use this process with a team?
Yep.
This is an excellent question. Individual decision-making is already challenging. Team decisions are even harder. That's the reason why using this process is very helpful. You break it down into 6 steps. So you get together and you ask the team, now we're faced with this situation, what is our goal? And everybody will discuss and you negotiate, and then you come up with, okay, this is our goal for making this decision. And then you go into the next step. You say, what are the criteria related to this goal? For example, right now I'm developing a website with one of my teams, and our goal is to set up a long-term website. It's like a beehive, so that we can set up various cells attached to this web, spontaneously multiplying. And one of our criteria, of course, is secure. You know, we know that there's a lot of cyber attacks and interferences and all, and then of course cost and so forth. So you go through step by step, goal, criteria, and then you prioritize. So when you do that, actually you take away some of the biases and emotions, because oftentimes when you have a team, people already have biases and they want a certain option. And so they try to push their agenda, they try to push their option as the best. But when you break it down first to goal, criteria, priorities, then you discuss options, and then you collect information, you'll find that the process will be much more smooth and also more effective. So yeah, that's how you do it in a team process. You take everybody through step by step.
Thank you very much. We see another question from Dennis. How to eliminate the influence of emotions on decision making? I think you already touched a little bit on this one, but I think everyone wants to know, what is the way that maybe you, or how would you motivate other people to see what the emotions are and evaluate them, and then find out whether they're based on experience or whether they're just excitement?
Emotions are usually related to self-interest. So you need to understand what's the interest behind that emotion. An example was at one time, I moved my office from one part of Beijing to an outer area because, like I said earlier on, I hated the traffic downtown. So we were within the 3rd Ring Road, and I moved it out to the 5th Ring Road. Everything was great on paper from my perspective. I look at the price, with more space and, this and that. But the response was actually very strong, and my staff were actually angry. So I discovered what was the reason behind the emotion. It was that their children schooling, and they were upset that in a new location, they would not have enough time to take their children to school before they get to work. So like I say, if you walk through these steps, you will find that you can take away some of the emotion. Now, there are cases where people will never change. That's when when you lead change, you have to understand that you will lose some people. It's always that case, and that is okay. You just make sure that you don't lose everybody or a large number of people. That's another topic, by the way, leading change. And there is a structural part, like the steps, but there is also the emotional part. So you have to head off the emotional side. And like I said, make sure that you help people see that their opinions are not bad. Okay, everybody is entitled to his opinion, but don't impose it on others. So in the same way, as a leader, I express my opinion, but I tell my people that that's my opinion. All right. I have my opinion, you have your opinion, and we can choose to live together happily. Does that help?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much again. We're really enjoying hearing from your experience, and especially wrestling with difficult issues and difficult decisions in life, in business, with our families. I'm so glad that you said that buying a house is one of the biggest decisions that financial decisions that somebody can make. Maybe you can touch on in some other webinar whether choosing your spouse is one of the personal biggest decisions that you can make. But yes.
Well, I actually use this same process because I told you I learned this 41 years ago. I was 25 years old. I married when I was 31. So yes, I use this process to choose my wife, and I tell you, I have no regrets.
Amen. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Me neither. Well, I would like to continue on the conversation, although it is now time for us to go into our breakout rooms, and we will have in the chat window only 2 links. I would ask if you can send the link for the Czech country meeting group and the Ukrainian country meeting group. Thank you. So we will only have those 2 options, and it was the same during the webinar. We had those 2 options for translation, so they will continue on with their discussion in their own language, and the rest of you will stay here, and we will all continue on in English. And we will break out into maybe groups of 8 to 10 people. It depends on how many people will stay and how many people would like to continue. Like I said, I would encourage everyone to join a breakout room, because this is the real actual experience of leader impact. The best experience is when you join a group and you meet in person and you sit down around a table, you have coffee, and somebody has a presentation and leads a topic, and then you all dive in and go deeper and deeper into discussion, especially when I talk to the people in our group. They usually talk more than me. You know, we lead a group of around 10 people, and from the first moment, I was the one that was talking the least. And I like that. I like to organize something. I like to facilitate. I like to prompt people to express themselves. And especially, I would like to ask people to share their, just like Dr. Tong did, share something from your life. We can all relate to buying a house. We've all gone through it. We all know how difficult it is. Maybe we don't know what it means to move across the world, you know, from China to the US. But all the steps that he gave us to take, and all the important information in there can be applicable to almost all of us. So I'm assuming that most of the people haven't, most of the people have clicked on the Zoom links already that are there. And many on here probably have never bought a house. That's true. So there you go. If you're going to do it for the first time, definitely follow the instructions that Dr. Tong gave us, and you will not make the biggest mistake of your life, or financially be in debt and regret what you decided. So perfect. We're down to 50. This time, because I want to hear when someone coming from a Buddhist culture is faced with this huge decision when they are grown up, or whether they're in their teenage years, doesn't matter. I would like to hear, Dr. Tong, you have already shared that you have made this decision to give your life to Jesus and follow him. But I would like for you to answer maybe, what are people going through when somebody asks them to change a lifestyle of being a Buddhist and stopping that lifestyle and then continuing on as a Christian? That just amazes me. Can you please share a little bit about that?
Well, I made that decision when I was 19, before I learned this process. So I obviously did not use this process. But in fact, it was similar. I was faced with some facts, and I have to respond to those facts. Yes, I grew up in the Buddhist Taoist background, but I never believed them because when I was small, I was 4 years old. I am the youngest boy in the family. We have 5 boys and 5 girls. So I am number 8. I have 4 older brothers and 2 younger sisters. As the youngest boy, my parents would take me to the temple. Is more transactional, meaning that they want something from the gods, the idols. And usually they want, you know, good health, or they want to buy lottery. So I would be led into the inner, the deepest part of the temple. Mm-hmm. It's just like in your supermarket, right? The most sought after items are put in the deepest part of the supermarket. So you go through everything else, right? So in the deepest part of the Chinese temple is the god of prosperity. And in his pockets are numbers 0 to 9. And I have to stick my hand inside to pick up the numbers. And out of that, my parents can use it to buy the lottery ticket number. I hated that because usually the worshippers will offer offerings to get the numbers. And when you have oranges and you have sweets, what attracted to them? Bugs, maybe even rats. So as a young boy, I hated that experience because when you stick your hand in the pocket, you never know what you will find. Maybe cockroaches and all. But the other thing is I come from a business background. I come from a business family. My grandfather, my father, all businessmen. So I grew up with a business mindset. And I said to myself, even at 4 years old, I said, these gods are dumb because you give them, a few trinkets, oranges and all, and he has to repay you thousands of dollars. So it's a very poor transaction. So I decided, there's no God. I didn't believe it. But when I was 19, I read a book and it talks about the life of Jesus Christ and what he did. And the facts about the Bible, I always thought that Jesus Christ was just a myth, like many of the Chinese gods. But I was surprised, and it talks about the date on the newspaper testify to the historicity of Jesus. I never knew that. I thought, it was 1974. I thought, I never thought about how did we have 1970 something, But anyway, I was taken aback. And like in my small group, Jimmy talked about how do we face the decisions. Now, this is one time when the decisions came upon me, because when I read and I realized that Jesus actually make an offer to me and I can accept him or reject him. So at that point, I have a decision to make. Now, not making the decision, like I said, is making the decision. Him. So I spent about 1 month and I collected information. And at the end of it, on December 30th, 1974, I went on my knees when at that time I was in the military. So I went on my knees, I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior. So I did not have this process, but some of the elements are there. And the most important part was the collecting of the information. And I collected information, and at the end of it, I decided that I have to meet the challenge that Jesus put before me.
That is just
and I never regretted the decision.
Yeah, it's amazing. Again, you are probably an example of a person who was brave. And I don't know if we have time, maybe we have 1 more minute, but making a decision to trust some new way of life usually has lots of reactions with family members. Do you want to touch on that a little bit? And maybe we'll close with one kind of thought that you want us to leave with, because we have a couple minutes.
Well, let me share one, in response to the question, let me share one anecdote. I brought an economist to UBS in Switzerland by Lake Constance. They have a leadership center and we were invited to speak. This was 2008. So the senior executives of UBS, about 40 of them, came and listened to this Chinese economist share. Everybody was interested in the Chinese economy at that time because of the global crisis. Along the way, he shared that that the Chinese economy has grown about 10 times. But there is another factor that is happening that most of the Western media are not aware of. That is that the Chinese Christians have you mentioned that you have become a Christian, but you also mentioned that you're a Communist Party member. So how can you be a Christian and a Communist Party member? And Dr. Chow answered, I just am. I just am a party member as well as a Christian. Then the lady asked a very insightful question. I mean, similar to what you asked. She said, are there no risks to you? Don't you suffer for making that decision? Would you lose your job? Maybe go to jail? Dr. Chow looked at them in the eyes, surveyed the eyes, and then said, well, we are economists here. As economists, we always weigh risks against rewards. We don't just weigh risks alone, we weigh risks against rewards. And in this situation, I have determined that the rewards for believing in Jesus far outweigh the risks. Wow. And I say the same. I say the same. After 40 over years, I can say that I made the right decision because the rewards are far greater. Did I suffer some of the risks? Yes, I lost the closeness I have with my family. We are no longer as close because they see that I have, left the traditions. It's difficult sometimes in family get together, especially at weddings and funerals, because I don't practice some of the things they do. Yes, so there's the cost, but the rewards are far better.
I think that's a wonderful closing thought, and I'll remember it. I'll remember to always look at the awards and compare them with the costs. And if the awards are far greater, then it is worth it. It is worth to have a little bit of loss. And every investment is like that. If you have the percentages of award with this investment or gain assets with this investment, and you look at the risk, if you compare them, then you say, yeah, this is worth investing. And so thank you, Dr. Tong. Thank you to everyone that stayed until the end. We organize these webinars every month, so you will hear from us in exactly 1 month, and we will announce our next webinar pretty soon. So until then, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.